The U.S. government is once again teetering on the edge of a shutdown, a scenario that threatens to disrupt the lives of millions of Americans and send shockwaves through the nation's economy. With a critical funding deadline looming at midnight on September 30th, 2025, the pressure is mounting in Washington as lawmakers race against the clock to reach a deal. If Congress and the president can't agree on a plan, essential government functions will grind to a halt, leaving federal offices shuttered, workers furloughed, and countless services suspended. In a last-ditch effort to break the impasse, President Donald Trump is set to meet with top Democrats, Hakeem, Jeffries, and Chuck Schumer, on September 25, just days before the deadline. Democrats urgently requested this high-stakes meeting, expressing deep frustration over stalled negotiations with Republican leaders Mike Johnson and John Thune, who have so far refused to budge on key issues. They hope President Trump's involvement will finally break the deadlock that's paralyzed Congress for weeks and bring both sides back to the negotiating table with a sense of urgency. Tensions are running high. Trump himself has publicly cast doubt on whether the talks will succeed, fueling even more uncertainty and anxiety among lawmakers and the public alike. Democrats insist the president must engage directly to prevent a crisis that could impact millions of families, government workers, and businesses across the country. Across the nation, Americans are glued to their screens, anxiously watching to see if these leaders can set aside their differences and put the country's needs first. A government shutdown would disrupt the economy, halt paychecks for federal workers, close national parks, and suspend vital services that millions rely on every day. Thursday's meeting is one of the last best chances to avoid chaos and demonstrate that compromise is still possible in Washington. The outcome of these tense negotiations will determine whether the government stays open or plunges into turmoil, with consequences that could ripple far beyond the halls of power. A government shutdown happens when the federal government is unable to secure the funding it needs to operate. This situation arises when lawmakers in Congress and the president cannot come to an agreement on the annual budget, which is essential for keeping government agencies running. The process is supposed to be straightforward. Congress drafts, debates, and passes a series of appropriations bills, which the president then signs into law. But when political disagreements stall this process, the government faces a shutdown. By law, if new appropriations bills aren't passed by October 1st, the start of the federal fiscal year, the government loses its legal authority to spend money on most operations. This deadline is critical, and missing it triggers a shutdown. Essential services like national security, air traffic control, and public safety continue to function, but everything else grinds to a halt. Non-essential federal agencies are forced to close their doors, and hundreds of thousands of federal workers are sent home without pay, uncertain when they'll return to work or receive their next paycheck. Shutdowns don't mean the government has collapsed. Instead, they're a symptom of deep political gridlock, when neither side is willing to compromise on key issues like spending, policy priorities, or controversial programs. Each year, Congress is required to pass 12 separate funding bills to keep the government running smoothly. But this is a complex and often contentious process, frequently delayed by partisan disputes, ideological standoffs, and political maneuvering. When lawmakers can't agree in time, they sometimes pass a temporary measure called a continuing resolution to keep the government open for a few more weeks or months. But in some years, even this stopgap solution is out of reach, and the government is forced to shut down. Shutdowns are self-inflicted wounds used as leverage in high-stakes negotiations. Political leaders hope to pressure their opponents into making concessions by allowing the government to grind to a halt. Each side bets the other will cave first, risking not only the stability of government, but also the well-being of millions of citizens who depend on federal services. The longer a shutdown drags on, the more severe the consequences become. National parks close, airport security lines grow, small businesses lose customers, and the economy takes a hit. For everyday Americans, it's a dangerous game with real-world fallout, causing stress, uncertainty, and hardship for families and communities across the country. The current crisis is a textbook example of political brinkmanship, where the stakes are high and the costs are felt by everyone. At the center of this high-stakes crisis stands President Donald Trump, whose leadership and decisions are shaping the course of the negotiations. As the nation watches, Trump's every move is scrutinized, and his approval is absolutely essential for any funding deal to move forward. The president's signature is the final step in the process, making him a pivotal figure. His approach to negotiation, often bold and uncompromising, sets the tone for the entire Republican Party and influences the strategies of lawmakers on both sides of the aisle. Trump's priorities, such as reducing government spending and advancing conservative policies, are echoed by Republicans in Congress, who look to him for direction and support. On the Democratic side, Hakeem Jeffries leads the House minority with a focus on unity and resistance to deep budget cuts. In the Senate, Chuck Schumer stands as the top Democrat, orchestrating his party's strategy and rallying support to block legislation that threatens core Democratic values. Senate Democrats hold enough seats to block Republican bills, forcing the GOP to seek bipartisan solutions if they hope to avoid a government shutdown. Alongside Trump, Speaker Mike Johnson and Senate Majority Leader John Thune are key Republican negotiators, pushing for lower spending and a more conservative federal agenda. Their strategy is to use the looming budget deadline as leverage, even if it means risking a government shutdown to achieve their goals. Meanwhile, Jeffries and Schumer are determined to protect funding for vital social programs, healthcare, and education, arguing that these investments are crucial for millions of Americans. They fiercely oppose Republican spending cuts, warning that such measures would harm working families, children, and the most vulnerable members of society. The two sides are locked in a battle of fundamentally different visions for the role of government in American life. Republicans argue for a smaller government, less regulation, and reduced federal spending, believing this will spur economic growth and individual freedom. Democrats, on the other hand, advocate for a strong safety net and robust public investment, aiming to ensure opportunity and security for all citizens. This deep ideological divide makes compromise extremely difficult, with both sides unwilling to back down from their core beliefs. Ultimately, the standoff is about much more than just numbers on a page. It's a struggle over the country's future direction, and the outcome will shape the lives of Americans for years to come. The shutdown threat boils down to clashing priorities. Republicans, led by Trump and congressional leaders, demand spending cuts and a smaller government. They argue the national debt is too high and see the budget fight as a chance to rein in federal programs. Their latest proposal includes immediate cuts to domestic agencies, non-starters for Democrats. Democrats, led by Jeffries and Schumer, fiercely oppose these cuts. They want to protect and expand health care, extend Affordable Care Act subsidies, and reverse Medicaid cuts. For Democrats, these programs are lifelines for millions. The fight is over two visions. Republicans want austerity. Democrats want investment in people. Neither side is willing to budge. That's why the government is at an impasse. Last week, the Senate's failure to pass two funding bills exposed the depth of the divide. Republicans offered a bill with spending cuts. Democrats unanimously rejected it. Democrats countered with a bill extending government funding and boosting health care. Republicans blocked it. Both bills fell far short of the 60 votes needed. Each side loaded their proposals with partisan priorities, knowing the other would never agree. The result? Total stalemate. Neither party has enough votes to act alone. The Senate's breakdown is why Democrats are now appealing directly to President Trump. They hope he can break the impasse that congressional leaders can't resolve. With the deadline looming, the pressure is on for a breakthrough. The Senate's failure is a warning. Without compromise, a shutdown is almost certain. The clock is ticking. As the deadline nears, political maneuvering intensifies. President Trump publicly doubts the value of meeting with Democrats, signaling he's not eager to compromise. He's told Republican leaders not to negotiate, suggesting a shutdown could serve his political interests. By taking a hard line, Trump rallies his base and puts pressure on Democrats. In response, Jeffries and Schumer publicly demand a meeting, framing Trump as the obstacle to a deal. Both sides are playing to public opinion, each blaming the other for the looming crisis. Meanwhile, Congress is on recess, making a last-minute deal even harder. Republican leaders have refused to call the House back before the deadline. The fate of the government now hinges on a single high-stakes meeting. The nation waits as political theater plays out. A shutdown's impact is immediate and personal for millions. Hundreds of thousands of federal workers are furloughed, sent home without pay, unsure when they'll return. Many struggle to cover bills and support their families, facing real financial hardship. Essential services, like air traffic control, law enforcement, and Social Security, continue, but often with staff working unpaid. National parks and museums close, disrupting travel and local economies. Passport and visa processing slows, and small business loans are delayed. The ripple effects spread quickly, hurting families, businesses, and communities. Even essential workers must show up without pay, keeping the country running under stress. Shutdowns erode morale and trust in government. The consequences go far beyond politics. Real people pay the price for Washington's gridlock. This isn't America's first shutdown crisis. The 2018 to 2019 shutdown, sparked by a border wall dispute, lasted a record 35 days and left deep scars. Televised clashes between Trump, Pelosi, and Schumer became infamous, highlighting the cost of political brinkmanship. That shutdown hurt workers, closed parks, and frustrated the public, lessons that still resonate. Now, memories of that chaos hang over current negotiations. Will leaders repeat past mistakes or find a way forward? Whether Thursday's meeting is public or private could signal how serious they are about compromise. History shows shutdowns damage both parties and rarely produce clear winners. The public wants solutions, not more political theater. The pressure is on to avoid repeating history's costly errors. With the deadline days away, the nation waits for answers. Everything hinges on the meeting between Trump, Jeffries, and Schumer. If they compromise, a short-term funding deal could avert disaster, at least for now. That would buy time for a bigger budget fight later. If talks fail, a shutdown is almost certain, with federal workers furloughed and services disrupted. The duration would depend on how quickly political pressure forces a new deal. The stakes are enormous. The economy, public trust, and millions of lives hang in the balance. The choice is clear: compromise or crisis. The country is holding its breath as the clock runs out. The next few days will decide the nation's fate.